Welcome back to the channel. I am assembling one of my lure blanks, the same lure blank I use for my spotted bass. It is 2.5 inches long, weighs 3/8 of an ounce, and it does rattle. When I assemble these, I use eye screws. They're on Amazon. I think they're under jewelry eye screws. I just take a toothpick, stick it down in my super glue, then take the eye screw and push it into the hole where the super glue went. Even if the eye screw doesn't really thread in, I'll still twist it to get super glue all over it. That way it really secures it in. The bill on these does glow. Has a blue and a greenish glow color. Every video I make, I will be selling 5 of the fishing lures made, $3 each. Almost all the time they'll be $3 each. And I will take custom orders anytime. Just email me at the email that's in the description. If you have trouble picking up these eye screws like I do with fat fingers, just get like tweezers that you can fit through the little hole of the eye screw, and we can thread them on with the tweezers too. Just make it easier. And always make sure your eye screw is straight, because if the hole is bigger than the threads on the eye screw, you might have to push it to one side, straighten it out or anything. And just hold it there for a second, and it should secure itself in well enough. Now with these blanks, I don't use a super glue accelerator, because when I print them, I have to put glue onto the 3D printer bed, which then when the super glue hits that, it seems to cure really fast. They do sell accelerator for the Starbond glue medium, I think is what it is. When I put these back eye screws in, it's more of a slot, not a hole. So I push it in, then twist it a few times, and then I'll push the excess into the slot. So, like, where the hole would be, there's some wire there that I can fit up into the slot. Then I take my super glue with the toothpick and dot it onto the threads. I don't dunk the toothpick back in. Whatever excess is on the toothpick, I dot onto the threads to make sure it's really secured in there. I do also make sure where the wire bends over and isn't, because since these bend over, you can bend them open. That spot I put facing front, because if you think about it, when the fish bites the hooks, it pulls it backwards, and it's harder to bend it open when it's faced forward. Just make sure it's more secure. That way, don't lose a fish. Because if you get a big fish, it's terrible when you lose them. The super glue is on Amazon for about $13. Now I got the lure blank already. I take thin painter's tape wrapped around the bill. It just keeps paint from getting onto the bill. Now you're going to want to take your favorite opaque white and do a base coat with that. It just helps all the other paint stick. If you're using iridescent, which we'll be using later in this pattern, just keeps it to stick and not run around so much, because the iridescents have a more watery base to them. Now, sometimes if you have really clear baits and you're using like opaque colors, you don't have to do a base coat, and if you do thin coats, it'll have like a see-through look to it. Although you don't want to really use watery ones, or you got to be really careful if you use watery paints if you're doing a see-through one, because if you hold the airbrush in the same spot for a while, it turns into like a firework looking thing, and then you got drops of paint everywhere. And you always want to make sure you have everything coated nice and even with the white, because that depends on all the colors that you have afterwards. I will eventually try doing a base coat of black to see if it darkens colors and makes more like a crayfish color, because when you use white, it's going to keep your colors bright and looking like they came straight from the bottle onto the paint. I call this pattern the electric pink shad. Now we are going to be doing the iridescent fuchsia vein now, because if we do it now and it gets too thick of a vein, the belly color and the top color will thin out that vein, because I really like a thin vein. You want to start around the eye socket, like even with the eye socket, and keep it going straight back. That'll give you the nice vein look. And sorry for the shaking of the camera. The compressor was sitting on the wrong table and it shook the table the camera was on. I fixed it later in the video, but I didn't notice it until now, so gonna be a little shaky. But you just want to thicken that up, keep it going up towards the top, and don't do the entire back of it, just go pretty far up on the back. And if you do get extra water or drops of paint because you held it there too long by accident, you can just take the air gun and lightly spray a little bit of, air on it, and it'll kind of push it back up and spread it back out. Worst case scenario, you can grab a piece of sandpaper when it dries, sand it back down, sand it off, or just do another coat of white over it. Now, fix that for you. I like doing my eye socket in the color, just adds a little more detail to it, especially on some of the like little bluegill patterns or something. I'll put a little orange in the eye socket and everything. Now when it comes to doing another side of a bait, since we're using the eye socket, it's easy to line everything up. If you were doing something where it's not easy to line up, you can take the airbrush and kind of spray around the very, very tip of the tail or back, and it'll kind of show you where it lines up because of the overspray on it. And since we're doing the vein now, it doesn't really matter where it goes. You just don't want to get too much into the belly, because then the belly will have a different tint of it. You just want it up in the top, because the top coat will be iridescent too, so it will kind of play on each other, blend in. This pattern is almost like a morning dawn with the black and the bright pink, although for the top color we'll be using electric blue. These are all Createx paints that I use, so I'm not sure if they're the same for every brand by the name, but you should be able to get pretty close to the same colors, if not the exact same colors. Helping hands always make it easy, even doing like production baits. You can clip 2 in, just clip 1 in each little plier clipper thing on them, and they can bend every which direction. If you want to have bright, shiny eye hooks, I don't exactly know what they're called, but just put a little piece of tape over top of them. That way the paint doesn't get on them. You can also scratch them with your fingernail, get the paint off. Now time for the top coat. We'll be taking electric blue, iridescent, going over the top. I like to start right down through the spine, or where the two halves of the blank meet. Even baits from the store probably have this line because of where the plastic is when they manufacture them. But if you start there, it gives you a good reference point. And if you ever have little drops of paint, you'll probably see me do this multiple times throughout all the videos that I'll end up making. But you can just wipe them with your finger lightly. If you do it too hard, you'll scrape it off and you'll go back down to the white base coat. So you don't want to scratch it too hard, you just want to do it lightly. And since we have the pink up that high, it kind of turns the blue to a purplish where the blue and the pink meet, as you see there. Then same thing, since this isn't the vein, you want to try and line it up as well as you can, because we're not lining it up with like the eye socket or anything. So you want to just kind of keep it pretty level, go back and forth, look at it a few times. And if you do make a mistake, you can always fix it or leave it as is. Nature doesn't have the straightest lines. Every now and then you get lucky and nature has the straightest lines. But the normal fish that you'll catch won't have straight lines. I mean, if you ever catch crappie and you compare 2 of them, none of their spots are in the same spot. No pun intended. And also just making that nose very blue. That way you don't have any white showing. Now, you might like white showing for your nose, just give the fish, maybe it catches their attention in some people's opinions, but in mine, I like having it all. To get the perfect shad dot, you want to get your favorite opaque black. Mine is Createx opaque black, and you'll get little pressure coming through your airbrush, let little paint through, and slowly go in a circular motion. And then you want to kind of give it a little not perfect circle, because there's no exactly perfect circles in nature. The most realistic patterns always have wonky circles. If your lure blank has gills, you can't really airbrush into them without it going everywhere. So, easier way to do it is grab a brush and your favorite opaque red. Mine is Createx opaque red. I use the lid of the paint. If you shake up the paint, it gets onto the lid. Just open it up, take the lid, and a little thicker bristle brush that comes to kind of a point. I think they're like horsehair something or others, or anything that's a soft brush, and you'll just paint it down into the gill cavity. Start near the middle and then slowly go to the top. And then if you mess up a little bit, it will be okay. It'll just look like a bleeding gill. But you can also try to wipe it off with your fingers. Sometimes it smears it even worse, so it's kind of better just to let it go. But also, to give it a better look, just go down to the tip, keep going, and then to give it the more bleeding gill or a gill that sticks out a little bit, you'll just get a little extra on your brush and push up against the back edge of it and go down. Once you get to the tip of it, you kind of have to, you can't really stay in the cavity anymore. You have to touch a little bit around the cavity where the gill is, but that'll give you a more bleeding gill look. Kind of extends it out from the gill plate that's there, and it'll get close to your shad dot. To finish up this pattern, I'm going to be choosing these red, almost neon ruby red eyes put in there. Best way to put your eyes in, even though they have a sticky back, is take super glue. The best glue is gel Loctite glue. I'm out of that, so I'm just going to use the same glue I used to put my crankbaits together. Just take it and dot it into the little eye socket. Get a little dot of it in there. You don't want too much. It'll dry clear, but it'll still flow out over, and it can mess with your clear coat. Some people use tweezers to put their eye in. I'm not the greatest at using tweezers, so I just use my fingers and my fingernails, push them down in where I want them, and then flip to the next side and do it all over again. I'm calling this bait the pink electric shad. I'll be selling 5 of these just like my spotted bass. They are a 2.5 inch crankbait, 3/8 of an ounce, so you can cast them pretty far. They all have a glow-in-the-dark bill. They grow a greenish blue color. Sometimes they have a little pink in the glowing. Most of it is just the green and blue. And I will always take custom orders. There's a bait that you want that can't really get at the store, know what colors, or just are able to describe what you're looking for. I can probably make it. I'll end up doing some soft plastics and fly tying tutorials and videos on that stuff eventually, once it gets warmer out. That way it's not so warm or cold in the garage to do soft plastics. There is the electric pink shad.